Welcome to Traveling Through Life, a podcast on the go. I'm your host, Tara, and the founder of the blog Travel with TMc, which is where this adventure all began. Traveling Through Life, a podcast on the go, is a fun and quirky show that delves into everything travel, whether from the road, in the air, and in between here and there. Make sure to subscribe so that you get notifications for new episodes. And don't forget to leave a 5-star review and a comment to let me know what you think and which guests you'd like on in the future. This season, we cover all sorts of travel topics. It's my hope that you'll find one or many that make you go, hey, that's me. I travel that way. Or that you find something that inspires you to travel in a new way as well. This week on Traveling Through Life, a podcast on the go, we meet Jessica Off, the founder of Guestware Trips. It's one of my favorite travel companies, and it's Canadian to boot. Jessica has had a fascinating life of movement around the globe. From living and working in North Korea, yep, I said North Korea, not South Korea, to building her company during the pandemic, and now traveling with her young family, she's done a lot and seen a lot around the world. There are so many twists and turns in this interview that I know that you'll be hooked. I'm already hoping to have her back for a future episode. Okay, I guess that's it. Time to dive in. Hi, welcome, Jessica.
Hi.
I'm so thrilled to have you on the podcast. I'm a huge fan of your company, and I tell people about it all the time because I think it's brilliant. I might even be a little bit jealous that I didn't come up with the idea. But for those of you who aren't familiar with Jessica Off, she's the owner of Guestware Trips. I'll let her explain more about this kick-ass company, but I came across Guestware Trips in 2020 and actually reached out to Jessica about working together after having purchased the Weird and Wonderful trip for Ontario in Canada. So we did end up collaborating. I had the pleasure of creating the waterfall route for them. And over the past 4 years, I've explored with several other itineraries. And literally in the drawer beside me, I have 3 more ready to go. So thank you so much for being here today.
Of course, that was a great introduction. And yeah, we worked together a few years ago. We still have that trip, and it's still one of our most popular trips. So thank you for creating it. Yeah, and I actually haven't done it myself, but everyone on my team has, and that's one of their favorites as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome to hear. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and where you're calling in from today?
Yes. So my name is Jessica Off. I am the owner of Guestware Trips. We started in 2020, right before COVID. It's been quite the journey, and the actual business model has changed so much. But here we are today in, I think, 4 provinces and about 13 states. Our head and only office is in London, Ontario. So that's where I'm calling in from today.
Nice. And did I see that you just opened something in Miami as well?
We did actually, yeah. So that's a lie. It's like a fulfillment office, though. It's really where we're shipping out our trips, because it's so expensive to ship from Canada to the US, as many Canadians know. So we just wanted to cut some costs, and we ship out all. It's a fulfillment center essentially.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know a little bit more about you. I know that you're a big traveler yourself, and that's kind of where the inspiration for the company came from. But do you remember the first trip that you ever took, or where your travel bug came from?
My travel bug came from my mom, who would always she would always put together these spontaneous road trips. And while we were on these spontaneous road trips, she would stop the car and she would turn the map around, and she'd be like, map attack, like, where are we? Where do you think we are? And so we would have to guess where we are, and then my mom would explain where we're going. And it was honestly, it was really exciting. And she really tried to always make us aware of where we were. Like, she didn't want to just stuck on our Game Boys or watching TV or even reading a book. She wanted us to be fully aware of where we were going, what we were about to see, and some history. So that's where I think I got my inspiration to travel. And then I just always became obsessed with the unknown and like looking at maps. I would always look at maps and be like, oh, that town looks really cool. It's beside like 2 rivers and the ocean's 10 minutes away. I wonder what it's like. And so, yeah, I've always, like, I went to school for hospitality and tourism. I have my Bachelor of Commerce, but it was majoring in hospitality and tourism. And I've only ever worked within the hospitality and tourism sector. So I kind of always knew I wanted to be like a travel entrepreneur. And this is not my first business. This is like I've had maybe 3 or 4 failed travel businesses under my belt before I started Guestword Trips. Not a lot of people know about that. And so, yeah, that's where I am today. And I don't know what was the, I don't remember the initial question.
Yeah, well, I was wondering about the first trip you took and where your travel bug came from, and it sounds like you had a childhood full of some really cool explorations.
A lot of road trips, a lot of like local camping trips. Nothing too fancy, but I think the most memorable trip the first trip I can remember was going down to Florida in a motorhome, and my sister and I got chicken pox. Like, that was the first trip.
No, you did not. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I remember the weather was like weirdly cold too. Like, it was not I remember it as being a very fun trip, but for my mom, I can imagine it being brutal. Yeah.
And how about like as you got older and even now, because you have a family, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Yeah. So like, how has your travel changed over the years, and how did you choose where to travel pre-kids and with kids? What does that look like for you?
So I was a crazy traveler before. Like, I always wanted to go to the most risky destinations. I didn't care about the quality of hotels that I stayed at. I just wanted to experience as many cultures as possible and as many different places as possible, which I'm glad I got that out of the way, because I have seen a large chunk of the world. And then now with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, I didn't travel for a long time with them because of COVID and because they are more high-spirited children. So they, they're not these like passive children who will just sit at a restaurant and like draw, like have a crayon and like draw on the menu. Like, they will make a scene. So it was a little scary to think about traveling with them. But recently, my friend, Mini Jet Setter, she inspires parents to travel with their kids and just to let kids be kids while they're exploring a new destination. So I've actually traveled with her a few times, and she's really made me a lot more confident in traveling with my kids. But still, I'm not taking them to hostels. I'm not taking them to North Korea. I'm taking them to new destinations where it's fun for both of us.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's key, right? That it's fun for the parents and for the kids, for you to want to both keep on doing it.
Yeah, like for a long time it was just Florida. We would just take them down to Florida, but I recently got back from Denmark last week. I've taken them to Mexico. We're doing a road trip down to Ohio to stay at a bunch of different treehouses. So yeah, we are doing a lot more trips now that COVID's out of the way and that they are a little bit older.
Super cool. And speaking of Denmark, you and I outside of the podcast today had chatted about that, because I just got back from Denmark. And as we had chatted, a friend of mine that I met while living in Ireland, shout out to Chloe, was actually following your trip through Mini Jet Setter. And she and her family are now moving to Belgium. And your friend has been a huge help for her. She's a big world traveler herself, but it's the first big trip with kids, and so Mini Jet Setter, she's giving confidence out to everybody, it looks like.
Yeah, I know she's inspired a lot of parents to travel with their kids, and has some amazing tips. And I have to say, she is a pro traveler with kids. Like, I had all of like a bunch of different luggage. I didn't have the right stroller. I didn't have the right car seat, and she travels with her whole family with one carry-on. And like, so she was just like whizzing through the airport, and I'm like, can you slow down? Like, I had all these bags, my kids. So she definitely is a pro traveler when it comes to kids.
Oh, amazing. That's good to know. I'm curious to know what travel traditions you have, whether it's like a particular theme in your trips, or if there's like a souvenir that you like to bring home, or maybe it's something to do with postcards, because I know you like mail.
Yeah, that's a good, like when I was a kid, a big thing was I would collect everything, like every receipt, every flight ticket, and I would put together a scrapbook. Like, I loved scrapbooking. I don't really have a theme now. I'm trying to create some traditions with my kids. When we go somewhere, we get like a keychain. But besides that, the only common theme is that I get to the airport like way too early.
Nice.
And I just make sure a bunch of stuff is downloaded onto my phone.
Yeah, nice. Especially with kids, you want to have that extra time there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Have you ever missed a flight? Or you mentioned you like adventure, like hitchhiking, scary experiences, anything of the sort?
So I wrote down, yeah, I've hitchhiked many different places when I was in my like crazy travel phase. And then I've never missed a flight. I'm very proud to say that.
Knock on wood.
And knock on wood. And I actually spent a month in North Korea,
Oh, a month.
teaching a
Wow.
travel course to travel professors at a university. So that was probably the craziest experience I've had. I ended up in the hospital there, which I can show you some pictures to go along with this podcast. But the hospital there, when you're a Westerner, is like you're going back in time. Like it was like 1960s. They were in the little nurse outfit. The equipment there was it was so out of date, but it was still very clean. And you were just going into this, it felt like the Truman Show. Like we were the only patients in there. And I had food poisoning. So I had a sty in my eye. So they took it very seriously. Yeah. And I was in the hospital for a day in North Korea.
I feel like I already need to invite you back for a second podcast episode because I want to hear you're the second person that I know personally who has been to North Korea, but they weren't there for a month.
Yeah.
We've got to have you back.
Yeah. And I have so many stories and I have so many pictures to go along with it. So
Oh, amazing.
it was very interesting.
Very cool. And do you have any places that you tend to go back to or in the past you would return to? Or are you like, I go to a place, I see what I want to see, and then I'm ready for the next place always?
So that's a great question. Before kids, I was like, there is no way I'm going back to Italy because I was just there 2 years ago. I want to go to a new destination. Now I am fine with going back to the same place, but exploring something new and at a slower pace. And I also appreciate travel, I think, a little bit more now. Like I use it as a chance to really disconnect from work and just go at a slower pace. Whereas before kids, it was like, let's see how many places I can see within what destination, how many different experiences can I go on, how many photos can I take for Instagram. Now I travel for myself and for my kids. So it is a very different experience.
Lovely. Yeah.
And I would love, like I was just in Denmark and I would love to go back there. Even like next year, if you invited me back, like I would go back, even though there's a million other destinations that I could go to.
It's so true. Oh, did you guys end up, because I know you were asking me about kid-friendly activities, did you end up checking out any of the trolls there?
The trolls. Yes, that saved us. Thank you for that recommendation. It was a travel day. We were going from Copenhagen to the Danish Riviera and we didn't know what to do and it was raining. And then all of a sudden, like, the trolls, let's see where they are. We did about 4 of them. And that was like,
Oh, wow.
I think the most memorable thing for the kids. So thank you for that recommendation.
Wicked. I'm glad that worked out.
And every country should have something like that because it's so simple.
Yeah.
Obviously, like it wasn't simple creating these trolls, but it was just such a hidden gem. It felt like, and we were the only ones at all the trolls. And when you come across it, you're like, oh my gosh, I found it. You get so excited.
Yeah, even as an adult, it feels kind of magical. Yeah, for anybody who's listening and isn't aware of what we're talking about, there's an artist called Thomas Dambo, and he's created these trolls out of recycled materials around the world. And in and around Copenhagen, there are 6 of them that you can find. I only made it to 2, but Jessica, it sounds like you got almost all of them there. And yeah, they're pretty funky. They're very cool to go and check out, and it's free, I think, for the most part. I know the ones that I saw so far have been, so it's really accessible for families or budget travelers as well. Yeah, I want to backtrack in time a little bit because this kind of coincides with guestware trips, but I'm curious to know how the pandemic affected your travel plans or goals, and also can you tell us more about guestware trips and fill everybody in who has not been
on how it works. Yeah. So I started the company in late 2019. I think I incorporated in 2020, but originally I was actually associated with a travel agency and all the trips were multi-day. So you would fill out a quiz and you would say if you want a road trip or a flight, and they would be 3 to 5 days. Very similar to Pack Up and Go in the US, but this was like the Canadian side of things. And so that was going well. There was some interest, but it was a lot of work on my end because I'm very detailed. And so if someone's giving me 5 days and a lot of money, I want to make sure that they are saying I'm creating the best itinerary for them. And so Yeah, then the pandemic hit and no one wanted to go on a mystery multi-day surprise trip. So everyone canceled their trips and I lost a lot of money there. And I actually had my son in March 2020, right when the pandemic hit. So it was actually nice timing because I got to really spend some time with him. And I had no sales for many months and that was fine. I was okay with that. And then I started getting antsy after like the third month. And I'm like, "You know, people are traveling locally. How can I tweak my business model to kind of meet these needs?" And so I then created 1-day surprise trips. Actually, that's a lie. I created 1-day scavenger surprise trips. And then there were some issues with the scavenger hunt because people got lost and a sign would fall down and then they wouldn't know what the clue was. So then I just simplified the process from scavenger hunts to 1-day surprise road trips. So our trips now you get 5 envelopes. The first one is a before you go guide that tells you what to expect, what to pack, how long your trip will be, playlist recommendations. And then the day of your trip, you open up the first envelope and inside each envelope is, a map, travel tips, different options, route recommendations, and you continue opening up the next envelopes and that makes a nice little day trip. Or we recommend an overnight accommodation if you want to stay over at the last stop and make it into more of a getaway. And so that's what our 1-day surprise road trips consist of. And yeah, we've been selling that model for about 4 years.
Yeah, and they're absolutely booming. Like the speed with which you guys have been able to add new locations, like it's something that I want to do on each trip that I'm on. Like for me, it's kind of becoming a theme or a tradition. But the other thing I love about them not only is all the different locations and the different themes that people can choose from, but because they purchase the itinerary, which can get digitally or paper.
Mm-hmm.
So snail mail
Yes.
people get the paper
Yes.
version. Is that even if you don't complete it in one day, you can go and do it on another day, or you can return to something that you really enjoyed because you have everything there with you. So that weird and wonderful trip that I took, the weather at the end or the time of day or whatever it was wasn't great. So I've still got the last thing that I can go and do, which ironically pairs up with the Ontario 160 Most Unusual series that I started during the pandemic.
I love that series.
So, yeah. Thanks. So yeah, anybody who hasn't tried Guess Road Trips,
it's an amazing gift too, or a pre-planned date. Like if you want to take your mom or your dad or your spouse out, like everything is planned out. You don't have to think about anything. You really just have to get in the car and go. And then it's like you said, it's great to do at different seasons. And a lot of people are like, so I'm just paying for an itinerary. Yes, you're paying for an itinerary, but there's so many different options within each stop. If you don't want to do the boardwalk at the first stop, or if the weather's not great, do the cafe instead and come back and do the boardwalk later. And you can really do the same trip a few times, but have a completely different experience every time. So we also have different themes, everything from haunted themes to waterfall themes to kid-friendly themed, and we try to make it as accessible as possible. And we often try to make the as much as we can, the stops free, because we know people are paying either $39 or $65 for the trip. We want to make sure that they're not paying $65 at each stop. We try to make it as free as possible when you're on the trip.
Yeah, and I know you also focus on like local businesses and sustainability as well. So like when I was creating the waterfall route, a big focus for us was to chat to all the local business owners and see, if there's a 2-for-1, or how can we promote their business? What did they want to talk about? And that was a big focus that you had put a lot of value on.
Yeah, we still focus on that because so often you go into a cute coffee shop and you're like, oh, cute, this is, I'm going to get this and I'm going to leave. But we try to focus on the story of the coffee shop. Like, is it in a historic building, or we need to know the backstory? Is it haunted? What's the owner's story? How did they start this up? Did they have a crazy story before they started this company? And those are just like neat facts that I've always appreciated. And I guess I just have a very curious mind, and I've always been a very curious traveler because I don't want to just go to a destination. I want to know all the fun facts and the unique aspects of a destination.
Yep, I'm 100% with you on that. Okay, we're going to go on to the next set of questions. So if people are just tuning in, or maybe they don't know me personally, I love languages, and that was actually my first love before travel. And I'm curious to know if you speak any, and considering the destinations that you've been to, like what's been your experience with either using other languages that you know or stumbling through the ones that you don't know? What's that experience been like for
I'm
you?
very envious that you have such a passion for languages because I think that's such an important thing to have. I can barely speak English. That's the only language. Like I just struggled with language, with the English language, with French when we were taught that in school. So I've tried learning a little bit of like Afrikaans because I spent some time in South Africa. I tried learning a little bit of Maori because I spent some time in the Cook Islands. I worked in the Cook Islands as well. So I
Nice.
always like appreciate it. And I always want to try to learn like the key words, but it's never stuck with me. And I just think I just don't have that knack for it. But good for you. How many languages
Thanks.
can you speak?
So I can get by in French and Spanish and English.
Okay,
My Italian is pretty rusty at the moment, but I
good for
find when I'm back
you.
in Italy, I can get back in the groove a little,
Yeah.
and then just enough to be polite in a few other languages, but like pieces of things here
Yeah.
and there. Yeah, yeah. What are some tips then you have for people who don't speak other languages to get by when there's a barrier? And I know that we have Google Translate and everything now, but you've been traveling for a long time.
When it was just a lot of pictures and pointing and facial expressions. I'm not the best person to ask when it comes to tips. Or actually, I do have a bit of a tip. So one time I was traveling in Hong Kong by myself. I was like 21 years old and I couldn't get to my friend's hostel. And this was like before you were able to just like whip out your phone and Google it. And I was so lost. Like the taxi driver different taxi drivers kept on dropping me off at different locations. And I was doing this for like an hour and a half. And
Oh,
so I just asked to go to a hotel. I'm like, just drop me off at a hotel. And so finally they dropped me off at a hotel and someone at the front desk was able to speak English. So that's my tip. If you are ever stuck and you're in the same situation as me, which hopefully you won't because of technology now, yeah, just go to a hotel and ask because they will most likely speak English or they'll have someone that can speak English.
that's a great suggestion. I've never heard anybody say that, but I
Yeah.
love that. Like people might not have Wi-Fi or data for wherever they are. That's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
And
Okay,
they're
well,
open, 24/7.
true. Yeah, that's a
Most of them
great
are.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of technology, how has tech changed the way that you travel personally?
Ooh, I think it's just the mapping, like using your map, downloading your map. It's a hard question for me because when I was traveling, like when I was like a really cool traveler, traveling all the time, technology was very different then.
Right.
Now I am not. I don't travel at all. I do travel a lot for work, but not to like really interesting destinations. But I think it's just the how has technology changed how I travel now? It's just honestly the access to data.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what's helped me now.
Nice. And then what do you do in terms of like preparing for trips? Do you use blogs or podcasts, YouTube, social media? I know that you
Yeah,
create itineraries, like you
yeah.
have been doing that for forever and having worked in the industry. What's your prep look like?
So for Denmark, Olga and I kind of prepped everything together. So we had a map. I use my maps. She uses places. And my maps doesn't like connect to your map, but you're able to change all the icons, which I love. And so we just had one giant map, and we went through. I had like a Denmark travel guide, which wasn't very good actually. But then we went through other travel blogs, got suggestions from there. Just Googled things. A lot of like DMOs actually have pretty good websites right now for
Sure.
kid friendly things. And then your map is also very helpful. So thank you.
Awesome. Good to know. I will link that map for anybody else
Yes.
going to Copenhagen.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. I feel like this next set of questions will resonate with you because of how you've described the kind of traveler you are and what you're interested
Yeah.
in. But we often talk about how travel impacts us on a personal level. And so first, I'm curious to know how travel has changed or impacted your life. You know, the benefits or what you appreciate
Mhm.
from it, or some of the surprises that you've learned about yourself or other places on your trips.
Yeah. Um, I just find it very inspiring. Like I have such an entrepreneurial brain that I'm always looking at like different ideas that have been implemented in different cultures and different um, countries. I'm always looking at like the efficiencies. Like I love efficient countries, and you're like, oh, why don't they bring that back to Canada? Well, you could actually implement this here. Like I just have so many ideas when I'm traveling. So I find it very inspirational that way. I also, so when I actually used to work at a company called G Adventures, which I'm sure most people know what that is.
Just talked to somebody from there today.
Yeah.
Too funny.
And there was this girl who would do all these G Adventure trips. She was from Russia, and she would always email me after, and she'd be like, I just always imagined her in a Russian accent being like, I love Cambodia. How do I move there? Can you send me the visa documents for moving to Cambodia? And then she would go on another trip and she's like, I loved Australia. How do you move to Australia? Like, can you send me the visa documents? Like she always just wanted to move everywhere she traveled to. And I feel like I'm kind of like that too. Like anytime I go to a country, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I would love to live here. Like I'm always Googling how to, for example, Denmark. I would love to live in Denmark.
Oh,
would it be possible?
agree on this.
Right? Like, and but yeah, it's with kids, it's just not possible. So I do get very inspired by destinations. I'm like, I would love to live here just for a couple of years. It never ends up happening. But
maybe
yeah,
one day.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, we of course impact all the places that we visit, whether we're passing through on a weekend trip or a day trip, or whether we're living there for a few months or a year like you and I have done. And we've already talked about how you're very conscientious with your company for the impact that we have. But do you have tips for people on like how to respect local cultures or traditions when traveling abroad, especially if it's quicker travel or if somebody's just starting out?
Yes. I mean, I'm a big believer in local businesses, and not supporting as many franchises when you're traveling. And also the other big thing when I travel is like, for example, Iceland. There was, it says you're not supposed to swim in this cave, but everyone does. And I just thought like, okay, well, if everyone swims in the cave and you're not supposed to, then we're really not leaving a great footprint here. Like, let's actually respect the signs. And it really ticks me off when people, it says don't climb on this rock surface. There's a reason why that sign's there. So I hate, it drives me crazy when people like don't follow the rules, even within Ontario too. It's like,
right.
And I've reached out to a few of our travelers on guest trips who there's this beautiful bridge on one of our hikes, and you're totally not supposed to go on there. And there were signs, and someone posted a photo of being at guest trips, and they were standing on this bridge. I'm like, hey, you're not supposed to stand on that bridge. Like it was this like historic bridge over a river. And so, I just always try to follow the different cultures and respect the signs and respect, obviously not leaving any trash. I don't know if that's the answer you wanted, but.
Well, yeah, whatever you have to offer people is helpful, because there's going to be people listening to this who have never traveled before. There's going to be people who have traveled a ton like yourself. So,
So I guess my advice is, even if you see everyone doing something, like respect the signs as much as possible, because there are signs up for a reason.
Yeah, love it.
And then until they like completely remove access to that area. And that's why so many important attractions you can't even visit anymore, because people just don't respect those sites.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah. And I think it speaks to as well that everybody's actions have an impact. There's often, I feel like I'm going to tangent a little, but there's, pushback. People say, oh, what I do doesn't mean anything, but everything that everybody does has a ripple effect to it and has an influence on what other people can enjoy as well, local or visitors.
Yeah. Also, a note, and this goes for a lot of the trips that we now have in the US, actually, and in Canada too. We try to provide like Indigenous history, what the land rights were. And in the US, unfortunately, there's a lot of slave sites. So we don't just, and those are like big attractions, but we say, okay, this is like, it's a beautiful garden, but please know, this is the horrible dark history of it. And it's important to understand this history, to kind of appreciate the area a little bit more, or really understand where you are visiting.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think about places like, and I don't know how to pronounce it properly, but Uluru in
Yeah, in
Australia,
Australia, yes.
which is like a super sacred site, and
Hmm.
has been for millennia, I believe, for us Indigenous populations. And many visitors have climbed it without realizing that, and realizing that perhaps that's not the way to interact with that
Yeah,
place. And yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's great that you leave that information in the trips as well.
Hmm.
Is there a type of travel that you haven't tried yet that you would like to, and why haven't you tried it yet?
I would love to try bike travel. Like I would love to like cycle a destination.
Yeah.
I've never done that yet. I don't think I'm able to do that right now in my like at my age with my family. It's just
Mm,
I would want to do it for like a couple of weeks, and I can't leave my kids at home for a couple of weeks while I like go bike around Europe.
for
So I
sure,
think in the
definitely.
future I would love to do that. I'd love to try RV travel with my kids when they're a little bit older. I know you have your
Oh,
own RV. Do you still have your
yeah.
own RV?
I've got the camper. Yep, yep.
Nice, very cool.
I'm changing things up a little bit this summer. I'm gonna work on
Yeah.
it, and then whatever extra time I'll travel in it. But yeah, it's honestly, it's the best.
Yeah, it looks so cool. So, I mean, a lot of that stuff pops up for me on Instagram. It's just maybe in 2 summers we'll try it
Nice,
because we're a
nice.
little too young.
Yeah, fair enough. This next set of questions has to do with living somewhere versus traveling somewhere. And you already talked about living in North Korea, and I'm curious to know, like, where else have you lived, let's say for a month or more in a place? Like, where have you bought groceries and settled in for a little while?
I went to school in New Zealand for about 4 months. So I didn't, I lived in Auckland. Not the biggest fan. Like it wasn't the most
I
exciting city in the
agree.
world.
Yeah, yeah.
It was great because it was a great starting point for traveling the South Island. But I really wish I went and traveled, say, I don't know, to Europe somewhere because I think that would have been more of like a cultural experience than Auckland.
Mm,
Auckland was very similar to like Vancouver.
yeah.
Um, and well, Cook Islands was like one of my favorite places. That was one of my favorite travel experiences for sure because it was me and like three other girls, and we lived on this like fruit farm right on the ocean. And I would hitchhike to work every single day. I worked for the Ministry of Tourism in the Cook Islands. And that's
Yeah.
just the way to travel around. You just hitchhike because it's just one road that goes around the island.
Yeah.
Obviously beautiful, very similar to Hawaii, but it's just actually like just more a little bit more authentic. And then I guess North Korea. Yeah, I lived there for a month.
Casual,
Wouldn't
I guess, North
wouldn't,
Korea.
wouldn't really recommend living there.
Fair enough.
So,
We actually have New Zealand in common. I lived in Wellington for a while.
oh, there you go. Honestly, I think I would have
Yeah.
liked living in Wellington a little bit more.
Wellington's a super cool city. I would say to
Yeah,
anybody going to New Zealand, like fly into Auckland and then drive down.
yeah,
Get like spend a day or
yeah,
two, go to Joppo for ice cream, which wouldn't have been
yeah.
there when you were there, and then
No.
get out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, let's have a look here. Oh, what's something that you do when you're traveling that you typically don't do when you're at home? Like I know for some people it's talking to strangers, or for other people it's trying new food. Is there anything that stands out for you?
I like to talk to strangers everywhere I go. So
Yeah.
I'm just a talker. I'm just curious. I'm like, why are you going here? What do you get here? Like I try to just spark up conversation anywhere I go. I would say I honestly just disconnect from my phone a little bit more. I don't check emails as much. This is now. Yeah, I just try to just keep it a lot slower.
Nice. I love that. Especially being a business owner, you can just, it's hard to turn that off sometimes.
Yeah.
What's the weirdest place that you've slept?
The weirdest place I've slept. I've never slept at an airport.
Never at an airport?
No, never at an airport. I think the weirdest, like, it was like in Amsterdam. It's like one of those, like, the cheapest possible room you could get. It's like 24 beds in one room.
Right.
So yeah, just like a lot of different smells, a lot of things going on when you're sleeping. Another weird spot I did sleep in, I think it's Coromandel Cove in North Island, New Zealand. That was a really
It,
cool experience. Like we slept on the beach, which was awesome. Yeah, I can't think of any other weird experiences. Oh, I did in South Africa. I did wake up and there was a scorpion in my bed. That
a
was,
scorpion in your bed.
yes, a small scorpion too, which are like the most deadly.
Oh, I would have lost my shit.
Yeah, yeah, that was a lot of bugs there.
Oh gosh. Has anywhere that you've been to felt more like home than like where you live now and where you grew up?
That's a great question. I don't think so. Like when I travel around New York City, I'm like, "Ugh, I feel like I live here. Like I feel like I could easily live here or I lived here in another life.
Yeah.
It does feel like home.
Very cool. Do you use points and miles at all? I don't think we've talked about this before. Are
I
you a travel
do.
hacker? Yeah.
I never used to be a travel hacker, but I think with the nature of my business, we spend so much money on shipping.
Right.
Right? Like for every package that's shipped, we're spending anywhere between $10 and $20. Plus everything else goes on my credit card. Like if when we're buying envelopes in bulk or paper in bulk, it all goes on my credit card. So for a while I was just getting like cash back on MasterCard and I was like, I just need to up it a little bit. So I have an Aeroplan Reserve card with American Express. And I will only ever fly like Air Canada when I can because my points just rack up. And then one of my biggest hack with them is the upgrades, which I
Oh,
don't know
nice.
how many people know about, but I've been pretty successful with it. You accumulate upgrades. And then when you're booking economy or premium economy, you use your upgrades to upgrade for free. And so that's worked for me a few times, like flying back and forth from Vancouver, for example, and getting like the live ed flats.
Yeah.
So I did actually, this is a funny story, going to Denmark. I was in economy and it was my 4-year-old and it was an overnight flight. I'm like, I'm going to bid on first class and see if I get it. And I caught it. And they told me about a week in advance. And I was like, this is amazing. I'm so excited. And then on the way to the airport, there was an aircraft change and then they bumped me because they bumped me out of first class because I paid the least amount of money.
Oh.
And they bumped me to the very last row where the seats don't even recline.
Oh,
I was so mad. I still haven't even heard back from Air Canada about it. I will always still fly Air Canada because of my points, but I'm like, you owe me a lot of money back. So that was really annoying. Yeah, so I don't know if that's just something to watch out for when you do bid. If you do win your bid, you're still at the bottom of the barrel. Like as soon as you get like there's an aircraft change, you'll get kicked right out of there. And then you won't have a seat selection. They'll put you anywhere.
Yikes. That's a good little asterisk for everybody, but Aeroplan for sure. And if anybody listening to this is new to Points and Miles and they live in Canada, I do travel coaching one-on-one with people and have an online course to help you learn all the tips and tricks from beginning to those who have been collecting for years. I had a client the other week who is a business owner and earns like 1 million points a year and has been redeeming for flights for years, but had been missing like a few key things and had been losing literally thousands of dollars. So we worked together.
I'm going to use you because I feel like I only use Aeroplan, but I wonder if there's anything else that I could be using it for.
Yeah, no, we can chat for sure.
Yes.
What are 2 or 3 items that you always travel with?
Besides the obvious stuff, I always travel with like multiple hairbrushes. I can't think of anything else that's like very strange, but like 2 or 3 hairbrushes just because I'm always losing my hairbrush. And if I don't brush my hair every hour, then my hair looks disastrous. What else? I'm a very simple traveler. I will tell you one thing though. I traveled with my own. So Olga had this like foldable $400 car seat that you could literally put on your back after. Car seats are a big thing when you're traveling with kids because it's like, how do you get around? Do you rent one there? But then usually when you rent a car seat in a foreign country, you don't know how to set it up and they won't set it up for you because then it's their responsibility.
Right.
So I was like, it's this grab this car seat. It was like $400 or $500. I'm like, I'm not spending that much money on a travel car seat. So I'm like, I'm going to bring my own car seat and I'm going to put it in I bought this like $20 backpack, which was just really a garbage bag with 2 straps on it. I'm like, and this is what I'm going to travel around with. I looked so ridiculous. I can send you the photo, but we were just traveling around Copenhagen and I had this like massive backpack, like bigger than like a backpacker's backpack. I'm like, I should have just rented one here. Like it was just brutal. And then you have to go to the oversized luggage. So that's one thing I will not be traveling with next time.
That's a good point. Yeah. How do you deal with post-trip blues? Are you one of those people who like has a trip booked or planned
Yeah,
as
my
you're
husband thinks I'm
landing?
crazy. As he was driving me home, I'm like, why don't we go to Madeira in a couple of weeks? We have a week. He's like, you have a
Yeah.
problem. I'm like, no, this is like a common thing. People book trips as soon as they, get back from another trip. So it's, yeah, I have to book another trip as soon as I get back. And so we ended up booking, we just launched in Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan. And I want to go down and test a lot of the trips, and a lot of them are kid friendly. And there's so many
Oh, nice.
tree houses,
Yeah.
down in Ohio. So we're staying in a bunch and testing out these trips. So that's what we have booked. So it's a little bit more feasible and a little closer to home.
Awesome. I can't wait to follow up. Will you share that on Guest Word Trips or
I
because it's more
probably I'm
personal?
Yeah, it's more personal, but I should share a little bit more on guest road trips. I'm really bad with sharing like my personal side of things on guest
Ah,
road
that's
trips, but
okay.
I'll try to do it a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear about these tree houses. I love stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Little travel tip though, like a lot of tree houses in Ontario are like $500 to $1,000 a
Right.
night because there's not
Yeah.
too many of them. In Ohio, because there are so many of them. Like we got a 3-bedroom tree house. It's beautiful for like $200 a night.
Oh, that's
So
fantastic.
and that was the biggest one that was available. There was like another one that would look so much cooler, it just wasn't kid friendly. I think it was like $150 a night. So
Okay.
yeah.
Good to know. Ohio,
Mhm.
you said, yeah?
Ohio. Yep.
Okay. Alrighty. Ohio, here we come. To round things out, we have so I've been putting together a playlist, a travel playlist for podcast listeners, and I
Hmm.
like to ask guests what's one song that either sums up your travel style or that reminds you of one of your trips. Because I don't know about you, but I feel like when I'm on trips, there always ends up being a song that becomes the theme of the trip, whether it's from that
Yeah.
location or somebody just keeps on playing it that you're traveling with. And if you can't think of one right now, email it to me and we'll add it in.
You know what's a good travel song that reminds me of like I used to like I backpacked around Southern Africa, and this was the song that we had on repeat, and it's Home by Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros, which is such a great song. And
Great.
so I would say that's like I haven't listened to it in a while, but every time it comes on it like makes me it makes me think of back in the day when I was
Yeah.
wild and free without kids.
Awesome. I love it. Okay, we're gonna end today with a speed round. I've kind of already covered the first two questions, but I'm gonna go over them anyway.
Yeah.
So where was your last trip?
Denmark.
And where's your next trip?
My next trip will be Ohio.
And then would you say bougie or budget? Would you prefer to have unlimited time off with a tight travel budget or only 1 week off per year with unlimited funds?
Oh, 1 week off per year, that's with unlimited funds. I would honestly go somewhere in between if that's an option. But yeah, I would do budget over a bougie then.
Nice. Okay. What's your favorite mode of transportation?
Mm, airplane
Okay.
or like while I'm in the destination, bicycle. Like I biked around with my 4-year-old in Copenhagen. It was so cool to
Yeah.
see the city that way.
Oh, nice. Did you get one of the bikes with like the big
Yep.
thing in front there?
The big
Yeah.
buggy. Yeah, it was
Yeah, yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah. Oh, cute. Do you prefer planned or spontaneous trips? And the definition of each can be as you want it to be.
Well, I mean, I feel bad saying this because I sell the whole spontaneous road trip idea to other people, but I do prefer to have a planned trip because I'm a very A-type personality. And I've never truly gone on a surprise trip before
Okay, all right. So
because
maybe
I
that's
always know
one
where
for the
I'm going.
future.
Yeah, yeah, maybe
Right.
that's one for the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you prefer guided tours or choose your own adventure?
Choose your own adventure all the way.
I figured I could see you saying
Yeah.
that. Has anybody, actually, this is not part of the questions, but has anybody ever planned a trip for you, given that you are the trip planner typically?
So my husband is so sweet, and he's now tried to plan 2 surprise trips for me, which
Yeah.
is really cute with like an overnight getaway. And but he always either leaves out the trip like on my desk or like on the kitchen counter. So I read through it being like, what's this? Or he like gets so excited I think the last one he told me about it because he was so excited. So it never they were great trips and they were planned by him, but they were never a surprise.
Got it. Got it.
Mhm.
Cool. Are you an underpacker or overpacker?
I'm an underpacker, definitely. Except for the car seat
overrated.
aspect.
Oh yeah, fair enough. I think it
Yeah.
changes with kids
Yeah.
anyhow.
What were you
Um,
what were you saying?
yeah, I was gonna say most overrated destination, either that you've been to or just in general.
I think Vietnam, like I was not a fan of Vietnam at all. And then after talking to a few travelers, a lot of people agree. Um, Another overrated destination. Yeah, I don't know. I love everywhere I go, except for
Yeah.
some parts in Florida.
Fair.
Yeah.
On the opposite side, most underrated destination.
Ooh, the Cook Islands for sure.
Like domestic or international travel.
I'm a big fan of domestic travel now. It's just because it's easier, and I'm really appreciating and loving discovering all these hidden gems in North America.
Yeah, nice. What home comfort do you miss the most when you're away?
Wendy's. Like I
Any
love a
particular
Wendy's
thing?
cheeseburger.
Okay,
The
fair enough.
cheeseburger, the bacon cheeseburger. I just discovered it. And it's like so like in Denmark, I'm like, we need to go to a Wendy's. Like they didn't have anything. That's recent. I think before that, yeah, traveling Asia, you're like you just miss Canadian or like American food. Yeah. And
Cool.
having drawers, like having my clothes in drawers when I'm in
Uh,
like living out of a backpack or living out of a suitcase is fun.
yeah, yeah. What's the best piece of travel advice you've received?
Just go. Just do the trip while you can. If you can travel, make time for it because you never know when like something can happen that would prevent you from traveling or an external event like COVID. So
Right.
take the trip now.
Yeah. What about the worst piece of travel advice?
Worst piece of travel advice: don't go on the trip, as my husband would always say. Don't do it. We don't have to do it now. Let's save for it in the next 3 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Worst piece of travel advice: I just like not. Yeah, I can't think of anything else.
Yeah. Are you a window seat or aisle seat person?
Used to be window seat, but now I'm aisle seat because I let my kids beside me. I want them to be by the window.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Describe yourself as a traveler in 3 words.
Spontaneous. This is 2 words. Spontaneous road tripper. I love spontaneous
Okay.
road trips. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Do you
Pre-planned,
have...
spontaneous road tripper.
I feel like that's a little bit off.
Yeah. No, that's 4
Nice.
words.
Yeah. We'll take it, so we'll take it. Do you have a favorite travel YouTuber or blogger, podcaster, content creator that you would, or that you have in the past suggested to people? Or that's maybe a go-to for you?
Right now, I would say it's Olga from Mini Jet Setter. I'm really plugging her here, just because she has so much great content. Before, it was a lot of like Ontario road trip blogs, like yourself. Like I used, I came across your blog with like the unusual attractions, just doing research and stuff. So, yeah, I guess it changes depending on what I'm researching.
True, good point. I feel like I could answer this for you, but I'll let you take it away. Best gift for a traveler?
Guess for trips.
There we go.
It's 70% of it's around 70% of our purchases on guess for trips are gifts because they make such a great and affordable like experience that's tangible that you're like actually giving to someone.
Definitely, definitely. And last one, best travel app.
Best travel app. Google Maps. That's the one app that I would not be able to travel without. I have nothing else that's unique. I'm pretty basic when it comes to apps.
Nice. All right. Well, that is it for conversation. Thank you so much for coming on. I learned a ton from you, and I want to hear more about these North Korea stories, but I can't wait to see where you take guest road trips and to hear about Ohio. Where can people find you, and is there anything else that you want to leave with listeners before we go today?
Yeah, check out guestfortrips.com. We also have a great Instagram and following on just Guess Where Trips, where we share road trip ideas. We share some sales and how our trips work. I don't have a personal Instagram account. I should start one, but I don't have time. But yeah, that's where you can find what we do. I'm on Instagram a little bit there.
Great. And I will leave a promo for people who would like to purchase their Guess Where Trips in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
so much, Jessica.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.